Okay, kids, have a seat. Uncle D wants to have a talk with you. Recently, an artist by the name of Beyonce released a visual album by the name Lemonade. Her introduction of this album came in a musical, visual, movie type art form that was released on TV on HBO. I did not see it, and nor have I listened to the album for various reasons. But if I were to take all of the reviews, all of the tweets, all of the Facebook posts that I've read about it, then I would tell you and sum it up into one word: infidelity. Now, for all of you who are part of the Bayhive, please forgive me for reducing this entire monstrous, beautiful, creative album down to one word. But let's talk about this for a minute. This album apparently was birthed out of Beyonce's traversing of an emotional journey due to her husband Sean Carter's infidelity. As I heard and listened to people talk about this album and read tweets and things like this, I wanted to take a minute. I didn't want to do a regular vlog today. I wanted to take this time, take a short minute out of your day to talk about the truths about marriage, because you can listen to this Lemonade album and you can listen to your parents and you can watch things on TV and you can see things in your family, but I want to give you the honest to God truth. I'm talking behind the scenes, behind the curtains, give you the real deal right now. So here are a few points that I wanted to point out to you guys about this. Now, as far as infidelity goes, there's a whole lot of things I can say about that, but that's neither here or there. Let's talk about these myths about marriage. Here's the first thing. There is no such thing as a perfect person. At some point, somewhere in your relationship, whether you're dating or whether you're married, at some point, one of you will fail. It could be something as small as not being where you said you would be at a certain time, or breaking a promise on something that you said that you would do. At some point, you are going to fail, which means that if there's failure that is imminent, that means that there is no such thing as a perfect person. So even while you're getting ready for marriage, you have to understand that the wedding ring does not transform you into this flawless person who does not make mistakes. Listen, most of us would have thought that having all of the money and having somebody as beautiful as Beyonce, surely Jay-Z wouldn't cheat. But Jay-Z is as human as you are right now, and the only difference is that his life gets exposed. So before you get married, before you decide to jump into this thing, this committed life for the rest of your life with somebody, make sure that you adjust your expectations, because if you believe that this beautiful, heartfelt, emotional roller coaster that you go through, that this thing called love, isn't going to come with some disappointments and failures, then you are not ready to be committed to anybody. My second point is this: commitment hurts. The reason why we even have commitments is because we know at some point there is going to be a reason to leave. And so we make a commitment in the forefront to let them know that no matter what comes, we won't leave. Hence your vows at marriage. It's because you know there's going to be sickness and health. There's going to be richer and poor. There's going to be good and there's going to be worse. But the commitment says that no matter how much the weather changes, I will stay the course. We will be a fixed point on this thing called love. But with that comes hurt. That means that when things are good and you're happy, that's great. But when you stay committed, even though you know you want to leave and you have valid reason to leave, and you're angry and you're upset, but you're committed, that hurts. Because that means you have to stay in the middle of the storm, even though you have every reason to jump ship and go straight back to shore and start all over again. But commitment hurts, and you're not truly committed until you've been through hell and high water. And I have friends right now, and I have family members right now who have been through hell and high water, and I can tell you that their commitment is real. When you're committed, it means that you have forfeited the right to a plan B. That means that while you're committed to this person, you can't be coming up with this separate plan just in case things don't work out. That's not true commitment. That's a commitment with an escape route. There's no commitment with an escape route. That means that you always in the back of your mind have a way to leave this person wherever they're at, in this bad state, in this worse state. And so part of me, and this is not me trying to give praise to infidelity, but part of me appreciates somebody who stays there. Let me give you a story. There's a guy in the Bible by the name of Hosea. God tells Hosea that he wants him to go marry a prostitute. Hosea goes and falls in love and marries this prostitute. While in the midst of having this relationship with this prostitute, she goes back and forth and back and forth. She keeps going back out to the life of prostitution. Hosea keeps going back out to get her and brings her back in. She continually keeps going back to her old way of life and cheating on her husband. It wasn't that her husband didn't have what she needed. Everything that she needed, a roof over her head, clothing, food, money, everything that she needed, he had. But for some reason, her old lifestyle always tasted better. And so she continually left the good life, going back to the familiar life. And even though the new life was better, the old life continually called on her. And she kept finding herself going back and back. And at some point, at this one point in this back and forth relationship they were having, she ends up finding herself in slavery now. And so Hosea has to pay money to get her off the slave block. And God says, this is my relationship with my people. He says, that's the kind of love that I have. Then later on, we find out that he wants us, husbands, to love our wives the way that Christ loves the church. And so now he's asking us to love. He's asking us to love our wives at a place that is so far beyond our human understanding. That means that we have to be committed like Jesus is committed to us. And I don't know if you understand what that means, but if you're like me, somebody who is continually going back to porn, somebody who's continually doing premarital sex, somebody who's continually lying, continually stealing, continually doing stupid stuff, and Jesus stayed committed, that had to hurt. And he never left me. And so before you get married, husbands, before you decide to take on a wife, I want to tell you something, that the requirement is not just to stay together. The requirement is not just to tolerate each other, but he says he wants us to pursue and love our wives the way that Christ loved the church. That's a whole different feeling than just being in love. That is a committed type of love. That is an unconditional love. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't have that in your heart, you will not make it. But I'll tell you this, if you have somebody in your corner who loves you beyond explanation, that's the person that you want to be with. In fact, if you find somebody who loves you like that, it makes you want to love them back like that. And even though you both will fail horribly at trying to love perfectly, you will find perfect love in the midst of your mistakes. And here's the third thing. There is no such thing as 50-50. If I bring 50% into the relationship and they bring 50% into the relationship, what are we doing with our reserve 50? I would almost venture to say that that reserve 50 is what we keep behind as our plan B. That I'll give you 50% of me as long as you're giving 50% of you. And then we can do whatever we want on the side with that other 50. And that's not how marriage works. As long as you have that other 50, things like infidelity and secret lives and secret relationships can go on in a marriage for years and years and years, and your spouse will never know, because you never gave 100% of yourself, you only gave 50% of yourself. And that is why you will find infidelity not just outside the church, but also inside the church, because we have placed ourselves in a position of telling people that they should only give 50% of themselves. That is not the truth. Let's do a math problem. I heard one of my great colleagues in the ministry use this analogy, and I want to use it with you. By the way, his name is Melvin McGuire. I will link his Facebook description below. This guy is full of wisdom. Think about this. If I bring 50% of myself, that means that I'm bringing 0.5. If the other person is bringing 50%, that means that they're bringing 0.5. If we were to multiply 0.5 times 0.5, then we would get 0.25. You would actually come out with less if you brought two halves together and multiplied them together. You bring those two together, you come out with 0.25. You come out with a quarter of yourselves. Nobody wants to go into a marriage and have a result of less of themselves. That's not the purpose. I would almost venture to say that's why most marriages don't work. It's because you come in with only half, and by the time you get done with it, the result is less than what you started with, and you never look like what you envisioned in your brain. And it's because you tried to take 0.5 times 0.5. But watch this. Let's assume that you have one person come in whole, a full 100%, all the way in. That's one. And the other person brings in 0.5, 50%. If you multiply 1 times 0.5, you'll come out with 0.5. which means that if somebody comes in whole and the other person comes in half, then the whole person has to reduce themselves to a level to coexist. And so the person who came in fine ends up being damaged just to exist in the marriage. And I know some of you guys know a few people who walked into a marriage and they ended up worse off than before they got in there. And the only way they're making that marriage work is if they've dumbed themselves down to a 0.5 average as opposed to the 1.0 or the 100% or the whole person they were before they got in there. So not even having one person going whole and the other person going in half works. The only thing that works is when you have a 100%, that's a 1, times a 100%, that's another 1, and 1 times 1 will always equal 1. And I'm telling you, if you want to come together and become one, then both need to be whole. There is no point in trying to bring in half. If you're not going to be 100% in that, and when I say 100%, I don't mean 100% perfect. I mean coming in saying that I'm giving everything that I have, flaws, likable qualities, dislikable qualities, annoying qualities, everything about me, I'm bringing 100% of it to you. And if the other person brings 100% of that, then you'll see wholeness in the marriage. Last but not least, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, marriage is for grown folks, okay? It is for grown people. When you look at the video Lemonade and you read about all the stories and you listen to the songs, what you're actually listening to is somebody who is able to express their heart in some kind of musical visual art form that translates to us without directly saying it, all the stuff that went inside of their marriage. Now, it also takes a mature person to be able to take all those emotions and all that stuff to be able to talk about it the way that she did. That's one side of it. Here's the issue. Warning, Bayhive, all you guys out there, please just calm down for a minute. As much as I appreciate the creativity and the musicality and the lyric writing of what Beyonce did, and I haven't even listened to it yet, but from what I understand, it is an amazing album. That is great. But in marriage, the hard part is that you don't have the right or the platform to publicly blast your spouse, even though your reasoning is valid. See, here's the hard part. Everybody outside your marriage, when things go wrong, will always give you their opinion about what you should do and how you should react and how you should respond to mistakes by your spouse. But the truth of the matter is that the only third person in your marriage should be Jesus. And unless we're able to filter our thoughts, our reactions, our mindset through the eyes of Christ, I don't think we can trust our own human response to a crisis inside of our marriage. I heard a guy by the name of Francis Chan say this. He said that he was the worst counselor in his church. He was the pastor. Said he was the worst counselor in his church. And he said he was the worst because he only had one response when he found that couples would come in and they were fighting and quarreling and having these huge issues. He said this: the reason why your marriage is not working is because one of you or both of you are not being like Christ. And it sounds so plain and it sounds so crazy, but he's right. I mean, I'm so glad that when I cheated on the Lord, that he didn't take everything that I did and make a worship song out of it. Oh, my son, he left me for pornography. Could you imagine walking into a spot and everybody knows the lyrics to this song that has to do with your mistake? Like, that would be bananas. Like, let's take it into a bigger context. Like, the Carter household, Beyonce and Sean, are about to get rich off of his mistake. And like, when he goes out in public now, or when he listens to the radio, or when she does her tour, every song that he hears is going to be a reminder of whatever he allegedly did. Now, it seems cool for us from the outside looking in, but just think about some of the mistakes that we've made that never made it to the light. Could you imagine what it would be like to have your mistakes made into a visual musical album? Wow. But in marriage, you don't have that right. In fact, she had HBO and she has an album and a record label and she can do all of that. But the reality is that for anybody who's looking to get married, your platform will be your friends. It'll be your family. It'll be social media. And in none of those realms is it okay to blast your spouse for a mistake that they've made. That the commitment that we made to the Lord on that great day means that we forfeit the right to stomp on the mistakes of our spouse. I mean, to be honest, the idea from the Lemonade album was that you take lemons and you make lemonade out of it. That you take these bad situation and you somehow form a good situation out of it. But I want to tell you that there's no way to take something bad and make it good without Christ. So, I would venture to say this, that the next time you listen to the Lemonade album, next time you watch the show or the rerun or whatever you DVR'd, I want you to do this. I want you to put yourself in the place of Jay-Z and think about if Jesus had the option to write an album about your big downfall. How would you feel? In fact, I would actually get some lemonade and take it as communion just to remind myself, I'm so grateful, God, that you didn't blast me the way that you could have. And honestly, the way that you should have. Those are my 2 cents. Hope this vlog makes sense. I love you guys. And remember, in everything that you do, keep God numero uno. I love you guys. I'm out.